Evening to all of you. Today in this session, we are going to discuss on, I'm going to talk on environment governance and the emergence of international geopolitics. I'm sure most of you must have looked into study material, and moreover, I hope you must have read more than whatever we have given in our study material. In this session, I will take you in a brief overview about what is happening. The story, the history of environment governance since 1970s onward, and what is our global efforts. So it is a compilation of a few of the papers I read during in recent times, and with that of with the basic background of our study material. So when we talk about environmental governance and emergence of international geopolitics, you know, the word itself, I'm sure must have known what we are going to talk. Then when we're talking, before starting into the exact topic we are going to discuss on that, first and foremost important is that there is a discipline called political ecology that takes care of what we are going to talk today, and more than that. And political ecology is the study of the intersection and the relationship between the political. We know that when the term political is used, it is broadly understood that it's about politics, and ecology is about environment and ecological phenomena, right? So that's why there are a number of definitions. This is the one of the very simplest definition about political ecology. And a few of the authors like Raymond and Sennett in 1997 have developed three fundamental assumptions in practicing political ecology. Because when we have that particular discipline, how to practice is also important. So first, fundamental assumption is that costs and the benefits associated with environmental change are distributed unequally, right? You know, if you look into, we are discussing from the beginning, and we are aware that those environmental attributes are unequally distributed, so is the resources, and that is one of the reason, and the cost and the benefit associated with those resources are unequally distributed across the world. So this, whenever there are changes in environment that does not affect the society in a very homogeneous way, it may be in a political way, it may be in social way, and it may be in economic way. Then that is why we are having, having, as I mentioned in the differentiation, that we had the world have a number of this war in form of the biggest are World War I, World War II, which are playing for political power. This is because of such inequalities happening. The second is this unequal environmental distribution inevitably reinforces, reduces existing social and economic inequalities because of the uniqueness of their environmental distribution from one part to another. So in this assumption, political ecology runs into political economies, as in change in environmental condition must affect the political economic status quo. Right. So third one is the unequal distribution of these costs and the benefits, and the reinforcing or reducing of pre-existing inequalities or political implication in terms of the alter correlations that are produced. Right. So these are three assumptions what was proposed by these authors. Then how we have to use this political ecology? The political ecology can be used to inform policymaker organization of the complexities surrounding environment and development, thereby contributing to better environment and governance. Now, a new term emerges here suddenly, that is environment and governance. So when we have to, for the political ecology is very important to inform policymakers, organization, right? So then second one is to understand the decision that communities make about the natural environment in the context of their political environment, economic pressures, and social regulation. And political ecology can also be used to look at how unequal distributions or unequal relations in and among society affect the natural environment, especially in the context of government policies. It can look that not only you can look in that national level, like a country like India, our that environmental conditions are unequal distributed. So is the resources, so is the social conditions, so is the other component in our nation. So then, what is environmental governance? We know that I'm sure you must have learned about this governance, and yesterday also the Dixon talked about the basic concept of governance. And if we look into that in simple logic or simple understanding, that governance is defined as the institution, structure, and processes that determine who makes decisions, how and for whom decisions are made, whether how and what actions are taken, and by whom and to what effect. This is about the basic understanding we have to know about governance. So environmental governance is to understand how decisions related to environment are made and whether resultant policies or processes lead to environmentally and socially sustainable outcomes. So the point is that when you're talking about environment and governance, focus is on environmentally and socially sustainable outcomes. So environment and governance focuses on the capacity, functioning, and performance of the institutional structure and procedural elements of governance, right? If you look into this practical framework of understanding objective attributes of environmental governance, here you will see that the elements of governance is, we know from the basic understanding of governance, these are institution, structure, and processes. The sub-elements under the institutions are, when we're talking about institution, it's about laws, policies, rules, and norms. When we're talking about the structures of the governance, it is about decision-making bodies, formal organization, informal networks. And when we're talking about processes means to make it governance, it is about decision-making, creation of policies, about negotiation, and it's about conflict resolution. In some way, when we're talking about objective attributes of governance, and it's about effectiveness, it's about equitable distribution, it is about responsible, it's about robustness. So these are the attributes like direction, coordination, capacity, inform, accountable, efficient for effective governance. So this is how we have to understand or how we have to aware about the concept of environmental governance. Okay, and if you go back to the how international politics or environmental governance was emerged, and if you look back in 1970s, there was green movement. It is, if you can look back from 1950s and 60s onward, there was, especially in the European countries and the Western countries, environmental green movement was emerged. Then that was basically based on deep ecology. That is the core-centric approach. They never care about society. They are, they are looking towards the principle of ecology. That's the core-centric. We have to conserve the ecology. We have to conserve these species. On the same time, some group of, after that, the another social ecology emerges with an objective towards anthropocentric focus of environmental movement. Then in the later part of 1970s, you will find out technocratic environmentalist movement. Environmentalist, today we call today's ways of environmentalism, that totally focus on deep ecology and social ecology, that we're talking about using technology for the conservation, preservation, and preservation of environment. And in the same way, you know that in 1972, Stockholm Conference was there. So in continuation to that, we have seen, especially in late part of 1980s, was full of international concerns through different that's conferences, agreements. You will see that 1970s onward, after 1972 Stockholm Conference, we have Tbilisi, the World Education Conference, Environment Education Conference. Then 1977, 78, we had that United Nations Environment Program and constitutions of that World Commission on Environment Development, and many more agreements was there. And many more bodies was there opposed to that glove at different level. It may be in regional level, it may be in national level, and even in the United Nations levels was also there. I will not go into detail on those things. Then it is followed by, the intergovernmental, this framework convention of climate change was also constituted in the late 1980s, and in 1992 have one of the biggest, the World Commission on Environment, biggest United Nations Commission on Environment Development was there, that's we call AIDS, Rio 1992. That brings an institutional solution to our environmental problem. And a few of the major output of those United Nations Rio conference was one is Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD. Then the other is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and then we have that to reduce desertification Convention of degradation of degradation of land. That I mean, if I'm wrong, please correct it. I forget the exact word they use. Then Agenda 21 is one of the important output of that Rio conference. Then followed after that, we have seen that there are a number of in that decade, especially 1990s, we have seen and the biggest initiative in climate change, then environment education, like International Council for Science and Science Education started, that Foundation of Sustainability Science, and many more was there. And Agenda 21, that there are a lot of politics, international politics on Agenda 21, whether we have to implement it or not, whether the commitment by the different country. At the same time, we have the 27 Rio principle that have on environment and development. Then followed in Millennium Development Goal that was, that was convened, or that was implemented from 2000 onward, then following for 15 years. Then after that, the present Sustainable Development Goal to 2015. So then what is Agenda 21? Because Agenda 21 is one of the important documents that brings institutionalization of environmental governance in one side and other side. Because of the Agenda 21, effective implementation happen across the world. Agenda 21 is a 700-page global plan of action which should guide countries towards sustainability through the 21st century that encompassing virtually every sector affecting environment development. Every sector we have to understand, or we have to aware that this word, every sector. So the full implementation of Agenda 21, the program for further implementation of Agenda 21, and the commitment to the Rio principle, called, as I told, 27 principle, were strongly reaffirmed at the World Summit on Sustainable Development held in Johannesburg, South Africa in 2002. That is just that we call as Rio plus 10, right? Just after 10 years after Rio. The point here is within that 10 years, we are not able to effectively implement Agenda 21 in 10 years. That's why global commitment was taken in Rio plus 10 in Johannesburg. We call it as Johannesburg Summit also. This Agenda 21 have four important section. First section is on social economic dimension that directed toward combating poverty, especially in developing countries. Then section 2 is on conservation and management of resource for development. Section 3 that talks that focus on strengthening the role of major groups. Section 4 that is on implementation. If you look into detail in this content, particularly when I look into that report, that particular Agenda 21 document, this is exactly the documents where you will find out in the United Nations website. Here we'll see that in section 1, social economic dimension, these are the chapter, different chapters. It is about, you will see about 36 or 39, 36, it must be 36 chapters. 36 chapters. Then the first is also, as I mentioned, this is social economic dimension, that under this international cooperation, combating poverty, changing consumption pattern, demographic dynamic, and the sustainability. These are the, different chapter under different section. Section 2 is on conservation management of resources for development. That is that talks about protection of the atmosphere, integrated approach to planning and management, land resource. These are the different chapter under this section 2, and in section 3 is about strengthening the role of major groups. That's about different. That chapter that talks about global action for gender and sustainable development, youth and sustainable development, recognizing strengthening the role of indigenous people in their communities, and so on. And in section 4, it talks about means of implementation. And so I will send you the details of all those sections, and you will get it very easily of all those documents in the UN website. Then we will go back to the principle Rio Declaration 1992. It has 27 principles. That talks of these principles that talks about the relation between environment and human environment development. So these are different principles, which also you will find out all these principles in your the self-learning material. Great. Then we know that an agenda, this particularly Agenda 21, as I mentioned, used in many of the publication, many of the analysis done by different authors, different organizations, you will find out that Agenda 21 is one of the baseline or where international effective implementation strategy was started. So in that, we have local Agenda 21. That is a tool for implementing local sustainable development. As we know that when we're talking about political ecology, when we're talking about politics of ecology, you see these all the environmental condition, all that the resources are unequally distributed, and there is need to effectively implement those strategies which are recommended in Agenda 21, and those principles which we have to follow. That was under Rio 27 principle of Rio Declaration at different levels, especially local level. That's why there is an important that steps needs to be taken in local. That's called local Agenda 21. It's a tool for implementing sustainable development approaches and at local level. At the same time, it also a learning process for both community and the local government. If you look into the chapter 28 of the 21, it identifies that local authorities as a sphere of governance process to the people that calls upon local authorities to consult with their communities and develop and implement a local plan for sustainability. That's local Agenda 21. This local Agenda 21 promotes participatory, long-term strategic planning process that has different local bodies that identify local sustainability priorities and implement long-term action plans. It also aims at involving all stakeholders in the community in different decision-making processes, like planning and management at local level. So this processes offer great opportunities for participatory learning as group debate, and when for a successful implementation of project or planning, participation is one of the keys to effectively implement those approaches and programs. So local Agenda 21 is one of the important tools for effective implementation of any of their process towards sustainable development. And so that we have Millennium Development Goals, which was I mean effectively implement from 2000 onward. That was happened in September 2000, the largest gathering of world leaders in human history, that gathered in the Millennium Summit at United Nations headquarters. And in that, the leaders, they placed that by 2015, the world would achieve measurable improvement in the most critical areas of human development. And this would be done through the United Nations Economic and Social Council, that a rigorous progress has to be taken, that the process has to be rigorous, that the process of evaluation of the progress needs to be taken annually at ministerial review, and the development of, there should be a development cooperation forum that was decided in Millennium Development, when Millennium Development Goal was recommended in that track. In fact, if you look into the Millennium Development Goals, it's a top-down approach. It was prepared by few of the technocrat or bureaucrat who was sitting in the United Nations headquarters. This was some of the views or analysis, output of the analysis done by different authors by different authors in different publications. If you look into the goals, there are 8 goals. First goal that talks about eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. Goal 2 talks about achieve universal primary education. Goal 3 that talks about promote gender equality and empower women. Goal 4 talks about reduce child mortality. Goal 5 is on improve maternal health. 6 is on combat HIV, AIDS, malaria and other diseases. 7 is on ensure environment and sustainability. 8 is on develop a global partnership for development. If we look in this goal, the most of the goals, they are taking in a very simple way, right? Like there are some of the developed countries, there is of the opinion that eradication of poverty and hunger is very much important in developing countries. And some of these goals, they are looking towards, most of these goals are they're looking towards environment and sustainability. So there is a lack of integration of 3 pillars of sustainable development, and with that of the 4th pillar of that sustainability, that is institutional pillars. If you look into the goals and target here, you will find out that when we're talking about eradicate extreme poverty and the hunger, and these are the target that have 3 targets under these and indicators that has to be done. But still we are using that proportion of population below 1.25 per day, poverty gap ratio, when they are trying to find out the progress of eradication of extreme poverty and the hunger. These are some of the indicators to monitor into the progress, right? The same way, every goal have different target and the different they have different indicators. So here I will not go into details. I will come directly to the progress so far we have met. Okay. If you look into this infographic, you will see the extreme goal number 1. No, what we have got is that here, whenever they're talking about the progress, the tag, the MDGs tag 1990 as a baseline. So we have half, it says that rates have been cut. Extreme poverty rates have been cut by more than half since 1990. That means we have to achieve more, right? It is only half as that on 1990. So that's why we need to go towards sustainable development goals. When we talk about Millennium Development Goal 2, it's about primary education. So it's also has reached to 91% in developing region. That means there is a gap of This also, whenever they calculate, they show the progress, their baseline is the 1990 only, right? So 91% was this. This shows that there is still, we have more has to be achieved. That's why we have to, in sustainable development goal, we have one goal specifically talk about quality education. Then when we talk about goal number 3 about the whole about that promote that gender and the empowerment, gender equality and empower women, that's also achieved. But in here also you will find out, even in our country in that time, we were not much achieved. So across the world you will find out that we have to go, we have to achieve more. That's why we have another goal on gender equality and sustainable development. In the same way, if we look into that talk about reduced child mortality, that child mortality also it has been halved, but in the same way we have to improve it. That half means we have to another 50%, we have to another half we have to go to have to achieve. The same way, improve maternal health also, 45% since 90. Maternal that mortality rate ratio fell by 45% since 1990. Even we have to achieve more. That's why to ensure universal access to reproductive health, that we have another goal in HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. Here also we have achieved. Then many more gap was there. These are some of the achievement. Then this report is totally, this is basically based on 2012 that their assessment report that published by United Nations Sustainable Development Growth, right? In the same way, you know, that global partnership for development, that is also increased 135.2 billion. But if you really look into the progress so far made, and in some of the goals we have achieved up to some extent, means in the sense that progress was up to the satisfactory. But if you look into what really happened, that for example in underdeveloped country, it was very, I mean, very unfortunate we are not able to get much achievement because of the some of the commission commitment given by developed country was not get to. They were not giving, they were not given so much, I mean, help or cooperation to those their commitment. This shortfall, the point is there are some few shortfall. Most of the shortfall is in this MDG is indeed very regrettable, because it's a operation failure that implicate many stakeholders in poor and rich countries. Especially, I mentioned you that promises of official development assistance by rich countries have not been kept. There are widespread feeling among policymakers and civil society that progress against poverty, hunger, disease is notable. As we have in, I mean, that's also in the report, progress report also shows that up to 90% we are able to achieve. But in some part, is the basic failure is because of the failure of the commitment or promises by the rich country. That is one of the basic failure. This is about how, I mean, we are starting from that particularly Agenda 21, that local agenda, that Agenda 21 means Rio Principle, Agenda 21. They are the beginning of global effort to institutionalization of global environment and governance. And in the same way, as we know that when we're talking about climate change, we are talking about commitment about to combat climate change, and to fight against climate change. The commitment by different countries are not will perform forward to mitigate the climate change. So this is because whenever we talk about this commitment, first we are thinking about our nation development, our economic condition, and for economic growth. These are some of the international politics. So that's why the another phenomenon when we're talking about international politics is ecological imperialism. That refers to the environmental aspects of the political domination uh, of territorial areas and subjugated peoples. It is concerned with the consequences to imperialism of environmental condition and the processes. And the same way, the term also has been applied to the environmental dimension of economic political domination of poor countries by global superpowers institution that's still happening about the conflict of North-South. And when we are talking about one of the major that environmental environmental problem, that is climate change. This ecological imperialism includes the geographical introduction of non-native organisms. These are some of the, I mean, what are the components when we are talking about ecological imperialism, what is happening? These are some of the, I mean, that's components which we have to be aware that the ecological interaction of the introduced organism material with human activities invasive species issues when we are talking about environmental degradation, biodiversity, degradation of biodiversity. We're talking about all these things. The role of imperial institution historically often those for colonialism and environmental aspect that is happening. And these are some of the components. Then green policy, that's also synonymous to environmental policy or sustainability policy. When you talk about, when you use the word green policy, and green is a very popular term for political ecology. And it is the, ecology, as you know, is the study of the way organisms and environment relate to one another. In the same time, what we are talking about political ecology, if you revisit again in context of in this green policy, is that political ecology is about the business of harmonizing the relationship between the human species and the rest of the world, whereas this green policy is a written statement that clearly indicates the position and values of an organization on environmental and sustainability issues, and it contains a measurable objective to be achieved. One is action points, the practical steps to be taken to meet the objective. The another is identify indicators that will be used to measure the success of the policy, and a timetable for monitoring and review. So if you look into how that environmental governance, ecological governance was evolved, we will find out that when we look from green policy perspective also, we will see that whatever the international politics on environment was directly related to this particular green policy and political ecology. That's why we have that every whenever we are talking about achieving sustainable development goal, millennium development goals, even after, especially after Rio 1992 agreement, and that we know that local agenda 21 also in the Rio principles, which mentioned that every section has to take responsibility. In the same way, the corporate world has also needs to be take responsibility. That's why we have corporate social responsibility, which is defined as the voluntary commitment of a firm to contribute to social environmental goals, and their environmental responsibility is an implied part of social responsibility. So it is an acronym of, then we call it as a CSR. So this is what about how that ecological the growth of environmental governance was started since beginning of 1970 to the Stockholm Conference. Today is what we are talking about, that worldwide fund, Greenpeace, and how these institutions and organizations are taking key roles in conserving the environment, across the world. This is how uh, we are in this real politics of political ecology and that ecological imperialism, then what we're talking about corporate social responsibility, what we're talking about North-South conflict, and this exactly happened after, especially after 1992 Rio Declaration, and the reason behind why we are not effectively able to implement that particular Agenda 21 and local Agenda 21 in the decade 1990s was because of the failure of commitment, or we can say because of the environment and politics by different country. And then but the same time, what has happened when we realize that environment, and because of that many more serious issues was come up, that is why in 2000 that in millennium that sitting of United Nations, they committed that we have to implement as in the 21 uh, and the Rio principle. That's why we have Millennium Development Goals. When we talk about Millennium Development Goals, it was formed by some technocrats, bureaucrats that was sitting in the United Nations that office. On the other hand, if you look into Sustainable Development Goals, it was prepared through a long process by involvement of different stakeholders, beginning from your policymaker, planners at different levels, and including your academic scientists, as civil society organizations. And that's why if you look into the goals, if you compare that, you will be able to understand that when we talk about Millennium Development Goals, it was very simple. Sometimes some of the goals will be very difficult to understand, comprehend that. But in case of Sustainable Development Goals, you will find that every society, every stakeholders, they will be ready to take part in that. This is what about today's what I want to share with all of you. The reason why I was not explaining about the 21 and MDGs goals, their targets and indicator is that, I have compiled those material here. When you look into this PPT, and if you devote 20-25 minutes on this PPT, which I have mentioned here with all of you, that will help you to, understand further. Thank you very much.